Now, earlier this month, thousands of prisoners were released in the Prime Minister's early release scheme, which aims to ease prison overcrowding. But within the last few hours, it's been reported that 37 prisoners jailed for breaching restraining orders were wrongly released under a system error, with 5 of them still presently at large. Sources at the Ministry of Justice have said that the prisoners' offences were logged under outdated legislation. Prior to the early release scheme, of course, the Domestic Abuse Commissioner said that victims were having sleepless nights as a result of this Labour Party policy. But the government reassured the public that offenders convicted under domestic violence-related crimes would not be released. But, of course, that has just mistakenly happened. Well, I'm still joined in the studio by my panel. There's a former Conservative MP and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng, and the former Labour Minister, Dennis McShane. Dennis, this time I'll start with you. It never rains, but it pours. I don't mean the weather in Liverpool. I mean, policy-wise, for the Labour Party, this is another absolute disaster. Early release, the optics of those guys smoking spliffs, having champagne outside prisons was bad enough. Now, these are specific categories of criminal. We were guaranteed by the government would not be released. 37 let out, 5 of them still at large. Another terrible day.
Yep, I don't want to think it's that, that mega. It's a problem, and frankly, the court authorities applied a law from 1998 that was completely overtaken by a new release law, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago, passed indeed under the Conservative administration, and that's just sheer incompetence. Now, it's on the government's watch. The idea it's the Labour Party was sort of not releasing or were releasing them is just daft. The real problem, again, is the Conservatives sent everybody to prison but didn't build enough prisons.
You can't blame the Tories for this.
Hang on a second. This is the trouble. The released, I mean, it's astonishing. I don't think any country in the world is proportionally releasing quite as many prisoners as this government's been obliged to, because if it wants to put anybody else in, I mean, serious criminals, then the prisons are full. Now, did you hear Sir Keir say you should welcome the idea of new prisons in your community? This is what we're going to do, cover Britain with prisons, because, frankly, our judges, we've sent 4 or 5 times as many prisoners as France, Italy, Germany combined. We're putting women, in particular, into prison for non-violent crime, not paying their BBC licence fee.
That's got nothing to do with the price of the bananas.
No, there was 37 men, I think it was men, have been released when they should not have been, because some bureaucrat, low-level bureaucrat, they say the Home Office is where every minister goes to his instant death, and it's been proved again. I hope a minister now could be...
Well, it's the Justice Department.
Well, it happens to be, it's the Justice Department.
Just before we go on, we don't know that they're all men. Most likely are. There may be some women in there.
95% of prisoners are men, right. I think, or 90%.
So, over to you.
So, look, I think, trying to be fair, yes, there was a prison issue. We should have built more prisons. There were constraints on the budget. But let's not forget, this is a political decision. Once the government came in, they took the political decision, policy, to let these people out when they did. And I could bet you bottom dollar, I think it was 1,700 that were released. You could have guaranteed that of the 1,700, there would have been a proportion that were released in a mistaken way, that shouldn't have been released. And that's the nature of bureaucracy. There are going to be mistakes. And I think that first of all, that the policy was wrong. They shouldn't have released as many as quickly as they did. And of all the things that Labour have done, talking to people in my former constituency, talking to people where I live in London, this has had more cut through than anything else. Because it affects people. Everyone knows someone who knows somebody who's been put in prison or who's had some brush with the law or been a victim. And this has had a really big cut through in a way that I don't think the Labour Party anticipated.
I just want to go over the potential of the people that could be still at large here, because including within these offences, they could be domestic abuse offences, which could be stalking offences, it could be controlling or coercive behaviours in an intimate or family relationship, it could be non-fatal strangulation and suffocation, or a breach of a restraining order, non-molestation order and domestic abuse protection order. Dennis, these were precisely the sort of dangerous criminals we were told, we were guaranteed, we thought, oh, they'll be tax dodgers, they'll be regular, run-of-the-mill, fluffy inmates. This is the precise opposite of what we were told, and you cannot blame the Conservatives for this. It happened today,
I'm not
and we've got
blaming the
5 of these
Conservatives.
ragbags are still at large.
I'm not blaming the Conservatives one little bit. It was a mistake, and somebody should pay for it. And I feel sorry for Shabana Mahmood, who's made a very brave start on all the women in prison, which I think is a much more important announcement. But she's got to sort this out and find out who is responsible, because no government can afford to play around with these things. People are concerned and frightened. There's too much rough and ready bullying and bashing up. And it used to be all done under the carpet, especially domestic abuse. So he's smacking a woman around the chops. That used to be just part of
it was a
married
different
life.
culture. It was a different culture.
Now we are rightly much more sensitive to it.
That's right.
Usually it's condemned as woke by too many people. I think on the contrary, it is very important.
But they're getting let out early.
That's the problem.
No, I'm talking about the reasons those men were inside. I think probably they were men. 10, 15 years ago would not have happened. Now, Conservatives and Tories alike are taking this far more seriously. That's good. These men, not a huge number, have been released. I mean, they're not going to go out with machetes to start killing people, to be honest, Martin.
Well, how do you know?
Well, because anybody committed that kind of violent crime would not have been in that category.
I think,
terror
Dennis,
offences,
but
that's
what
it.
will happen, and I can guarantee this is what's going to happen. God forbid, I hope it doesn't happen, but if any of these prisoners commits a serious crime in the next few months, life-harming, life-ending, God forbid, this will be a huge story.
And the chances of that are now greater tonight, was it?
I'm not predicting it, but I'm saying if it happens, this will be an enormous story, and the government will be under, and the ministers, relevant ministers, will be under huge pressure.
But don't you think, Kwasi, that the Home Office would have told every chief constable, everybody in the police service, you find those guys so damn quick and get them back inside?
Yeah, but the problem is that you've let out, I don't know what it was in the first batch, 1,700.
Yes.
By the end of next month, there'll be another 1,700, as I understand.
Well, I think that might be reviewed.
Yeah, and you've got a whole bunch of it, and there's no way you can tag them all or work out what they're all doing.
You can, actually.
And it does take, all it takes is one or two.
Yeah, I do know.
Really evil.
I
will use that word.
Yes.
And then this policy
but a
will be
person
totally
can come out of
discredited.
prison after serving a sentence and the next day kill someone. So I think
that's the point.
Well,
that is the point.
That's the point.
But the point is, you do it after the proper end of your sentence and do something very bad. I do think, get me wrong, I mean, Labour is making, in my judgment, in so many areas, what I call lots and lots of unforced errors.
Yep.
And
I agree with that.
That is, I say that what Labour needs now, what Sir Keir Starmer needs now, is a JAP response. It's not a racist term. It is Jonathan Powell, Alistair Campbell and Peter Mandelson, Chief of Staff, who isn't a story herself.
That's right.
A head of communications, and I don't even know who is the head of communications for the Prime Minister of the Conservative Party now, and then someone who's got an organic, wider view of things.
Look, I couldn't agree with you more. And I was part of government that didn't have a grip. I mean, with Liz Truss, Boris to a lesser degree, and it's obvious to me that there is no central coordinating force at the heart of government.
Okay. We have to move on, gentlemen. I have a statement to read out from Downing Street. A spokesman said this: "We're working with the police urgently to return the people who were sentenced using outdated legislation. They've all been monitored since their release, so they will be brought back into prison." Well, at least that's good to know.